In today's video, I'm going to be showing you how many cans of glue we're going to be using on a sedan. This is about a medium-sized sedan, and we're using hasc-tac, hasc-tac brand. We got away with using about 1.5 cans to complete this job. This canister of the hasc-tac is what we usually would use, which is like a massive aerosol can, and basically it's about 15 litres or something like that. It's delivered through the hose and gun, and it makes for much convenience of use because there's no sound, there's no compressor noise. You just turn it on, away you go, and once you're done, you just screw it basically into the closed position, and it's good to go next time when you're ready. So it just saves for like not cleaning guns and running the compressors with noises and stuff. It's low odor glue as well. But yeah, hasc-tac, hasc-tac in the can on the 575mm is the ones that we're going to use. We keep 2 styles of glue on the shelf, just in case any supply issues. We can always move from different brands, but we've got the hasc-tac, hasc-tac, and we've also got the TensorGrip T65 as well. But with this job today, we are using customer supplied suede foam backed material. This one is not as good quality as the stuff that we usually have on the shelf. It's going to be quite difficult to get a really good outcome on this job today because there's no stitching on the foam backing. But all Armour materials, if you were to buy our fabric that we sell on eBay, it has stitching on the back that protects the foam layer. See, this one's just raw foam and it can easily scratch off. And what can happen there is when you go to apply it to the job, if you have to lift up that material again to replace it somewhere, you may potentially lose your foam instantly. And doing so, when you go to add glue again, you'll probably get glue stains come through. So it just makes for like really hard process of basically to lay this material down and get it in one shot. Depending on your dry time, you have got the availability to lift it back up and then reposition it. That's why we like to use the hasc-tac or the T65 tensor grips, because they've both got a really good open dry time. Our material, you can see how we got stitching on the back. So all our materials, we've got stitching on the back. The flat knits and the velours, the suedes that we ran out of stock, they're going to be coming back on the shelf about September 2003. There's a close-up of the flat knits and the velours. The flat knits are more stitch pattern. You can see the difference there. And the velours are more of that softer type of fluffier feel. Okay, we've got some heaters on just to bump up the temperature this morning because it's quite a cold morning, and basically you don't want it too cold but you don't want it too hot as well. So we've got it perfectly here. It's about sitting about maybe about 20 degrees in this shed, maybe about 18 degrees, which is quite ideal to give you that open time to apply this material. Preparation and cleaning to remove the old foam, using a straw brush usually to take off the old foam. We've done several videos on our channel explaining the process of removing the old foam, what you can do, what materials you can use, and the things to avoid. So make sure you do check out our other videos on our YouTube just to follow those steps in case they're required. So we're going to start by spraying the glue in all the high stress areas. And the reason we spray into all those high stress areas is because it's anywhere that there's deep recesses, anywhere the material has to feed in there and placed under a lot of tension and stress. So any bends and curves, you want to make sure you've got good coverage of glue there, because they're the areas that would probably lift first if the fabric was to let go. And when you're spraying this glue, just make sure that you're not going too close and getting a puddle, but you also want to make sure that you're not going too far away when you're spraying the glue, because it will catch a lot of air, and when it lands on the board, it's going to start to look webby and it might not stick properly. So basically there's about 15 centimeters I'm away when I'm spraying on the board. I'll go around and spray the borders now around the edges of the headliner board just to maintain the spray section where I'm going to be working in, so basically to maintain any overspray. From there I'm going to spray left to right, overlapping about 50% each time roughly. I usually prefer a really wide spray pattern. The guns that we usually use from the massive canisters have got a wide spray pattern. This one on the can exactly not as wide as I would like it to be, so it's quite difficult to get that even coverage. But you know, you've got to work. I'm just showing you guys that because obviously if you were to do your own do-it-yourself project, you're probably just going to buy the cans and not the canister itself. So I'm just showing you how to use it with cans today. On these cans, it does have like a low, medium and high nozzle, like movement on the nozzle. So I've got mine turned to high just to give it, I guess, a much better width of spray. And then So we've done the left to right, overlapping about 50% each time, just making sure we haven't missed any sections on this. And then from there, I'm just going to make sure that I have got really good coverage on the board. And I'm kind of going, again, the opposite pattern, just going left to right again, overlapping about 50% each time, just making sure I've got really good coverage, because there's no point I'm doing this job and putting a bit too little of glue on, I guess, and then the material just gives way. So I'm making sure I've got really good coverage. From there, I'm going to proceed to spraying the back of the material now. Same type of concept, just left to right, overlapping about 50% each time. Here and there, I'm giving the can of glue a shake as well, just to make sure. Also, doing a job like this, holding your finger down on that little spray nozzle itself can get quite tedious. So there are attachments you can buy for like aerosol cans, where you can basically make it so it's much easier to press on those buttons long term. And I've got one of those as well, but I think you can buy them from Bunnings and hardware stores, little attachments to the aerosol cans. It just makes for easier application. So pretty much what we're doing here, we're just spraying left to right again, overlapping about 50% each time, making sure we've got good coverage, not missing any sections of this material. You can kind of see the spray pattern when it's coming out, so you can kind of see where you've missed, and just making sure that everything's getting a nice even coat. We will have links to all the fabrics and glues that we use and keep on the shelf. They will be on our description section on our YouTube page, also on the comment section pinned to this video on YouTube, and that will take you to our eBay page, and you can browse through the fabrics that we keep on the shelf. Like I said, we've got about 9 fabrics of the velours and the flat knits that we keep and use daily, but we also got suede coming to the list as well, which the supply is currently out of stock, so we just got to wait till roughly about ETA September 2003, and we'll have our suede available, which is going to be a really high quality suede, automotive grade. It's going to have the stitching on the back of the foam. We've done a video of using that material as well, and it turned out really good. So it's much better than using this material that we're using today, because this stuff here has no stretch at all. It can break really easily and tear if you've put a cut into it, and you only get one shot sometimes, depending on the temperature that you're applying this material at. You only get one shot at laying this fabric to the board, because if you have to lift it back up again and reposition it, sometimes you'll lose your foam instantly, and it just becomes a nightmare of a fabric to actually use on these type of jobs. So yeah, hopefully it all turns out really good today, and I'll show you any troubleshooting that we might run into and show you how to work around that. But yeah, so with the glue, once again on this side, so we've folded the fabric over about 50%, using a cylinder to create a nice fold line. Otherwise, if we didn't have that cylinder there, the fold line is going to be more harsh. So we just use that just to create a nice little round edge when it folds over. And then we're doing the same thing as what we did to the front. We sprayed in the high stress areas. We sprayed our border around the edge, the outer edge of the headliner board, to maintain overspray. And then from there, we're just going left to right, overlapping about 50% each time, doing that a few times just to make sure that we got good coverage. And then we're going to proceed to spray the back of the material after that. So these cans that we're using today, they're 575ml in the volume, and at the completion of this job, we're going to get away with using 1.5 cans. So we couldn't get the job completed with just 1 can. We had to switch over to that second can, and it's about to run out about now. We're actually starting to lose a bit of that spray as we're going through, starting to die down. So we're going to switch over to the second can now. But if you're using, say, the Permatex brand of carpet and headliner adhesive, those cans are quite bigger in volume, like larger in volume, same as the 3M76. So in saying that, the coverage, you may potentially get a tiny bit more out of those brands of glue. But their hasc-tac and their T65 Tensor Grip, they're both about 575ml in volume. So in saying that, you're probably going to be needing, if you're doing a sedan, you're going to be needing that 1.5 cans of glue if you're spraying exactly the way we're doing it today. But we did do a video where we did a sedan, and it was out of a smaller sedan. It was just a Commodore VZ or VY sedan. So those boards are more basically flat, so there's no high stress areas, so you don't have to worry about spraying extra glue there. And also they're a much smaller board. They're just slightly bit bigger than a Ute headliner board. So on that video that we did, we kind of got away with using one can, but that was in the Permatex brand as well, so the can volume was a bit larger than what we're using today. So yeah, this video is just more or less to show you how to use this hasc-tac brand through the aerosol cans, and how much coverage we can get out of doing a sedan. So we're onto our second can. We're spraying on the back of that material now, making sure that we haven't missed any sections. You can kind of see the spray pattern lines anyway, and we'll just fill in those missed sections that we've sprayed, and make sure we get good coverage. And sometimes when you do spray this glue, you don't exactly see, you know, it might look like you haven't sprayed glue, but it's just because the section near it you've sprayed twice and it looks a bit darker. So no need to use too much and overuse the glue. It's just make sure you got good coverage. From here, we're going to use an off-cut piece of roof lining material as an application pad to push down on the fabric when we apply it to the board. And the reason we do that is just prevents your fingertips from pushing too hard on the fabric as you're applying it to the board and denting the fabric. So when you do buy fabric through us, we do include just a little off-cut of headlining material. You can use a little foam backed piece that you can use for an application. But say if we didn't, you can always just cut a little corner section off the overhang of the fabric you're using today and just use that as an application. Now you can see how we're struggling a tiny bit here using this type of fabric that the customer supplied, because it's almost like a cardboard canvasy type of feel. There's no stretch to it. So as you're applying it, it's creasing up, you know, it's like you only get one shot at it as well. So as you're pushing it down, you've got to make sure that you've got it in the right location and position, because if you go to lift it up again, you're going to lose your foam. So you can see how this material is not convenient to use. And that's what we base a lot of our fabric that we keep on our shelf, is how close can we get to the original factory material without compromising on quality and convenience of use, because we try to make sure that we keep the most convenient product on the shelf. But sometimes you do get customers where they supply their own brand of material, and unfortunately sometimes that's quite difficult to work with. You can see that when we went to pull that material back up, then we got to a point where it wanted to rip the foam up, so we couldn't go any more past that point. So we just got to try to work out this bagginess in the material and work it out to the edges. And this is a great video just to show you the difference between applying, say, a more cheaper quality of fabric than our previous videos, where we get a lot of comments saying you make it look easy. A lot of that easiness that's coming from you know, doing this job on the previous videos is basically because we're using the best materials. They've got the good stretch, 4-way stretch. It's got the stitching on the back of the foam that you can get multiple shots at laying the job down. See, because of this fabric today that hasn't got no stretch, and these deep recesses where the grab handles go need a lot of material fed into them. This material that we're using, the fabrics, hasn't got the capability of going down there and then really feeding into it. So we're trying to allow a lot of slack to go into that deep recess of that grab handle to make sure that it's not going to be you know, coming unstuck or popping up. So it's going to take a bit of working in there, where if we were using just, say, our usual flat knit fabrics that we got on the shelf, say on the Holden VE that we're working on today, it would be just a number 5 anthracite. If it was a black color, we would almost zoom past that point. It'd be that fast, because the material will just feed in there instantly, and you can be rest assured that it's not going to sag again, because it's like you got a lot of slack and no tension fed into those deep recesses. So one way at applying this type of fabric that's quite difficult to work with, say you've got a bulked up a lot of material, you've got to pull it and stretch it and try to anchor it down on one side. Do the same on the opposite side, And then from there, now that you've got a lot of tension and a lot of stress pulling it from left to right, you've got less bulk in the middle and you can slowly work out that bulk. That's the best way I know of trying to apply fabric that hasn't got no stretch to it, and it starts to bulk up and crease up. That's the best way I know how to do it, is just by trying to stretch the fabric from left to right and then go back to the middle and then work out the middle again. So you can see that worked out perfectly here. It takes practice, takes time to learn the nature of different fabrics to work with. But from my trade, working with furniture upholstery, working with vinyls and leathers and all sorts of fabrics, and going to TAFE trade school, learning all this type of stuff, you can learn that if you bridge the fabric from point A to point B there, it's going to have a lot of bounce to the fabric. So you've got to try to feed it in, try to feed a lot of slack into those deep recesses. But then also sometimes when it creases up or bulks up in one area, you got to kind of pull the fabric really tight one side, pull the other side really tight to the other side, to try to work out all the bulk of fabric that's building up on you, and then from there come back to the middle and then try to work it out. So you can see here, our goal was to get the fabric deep into those grab handles, making sure that it's really touching the board, and then from there we're going to try to work out this bulk of fabric that's building up by pulling really tight left to right. And you don't have to do this method with our fabric that we do sell on our eBay page. This is not necessary because it just falls into place. You don't need to put this much effort into applying fabric with our type of materials that we sell. So just keep that in mind, that what we're doing here is not needed for our fabric. This is just for like working with this stubborn material. So and you can see the outcomes turned out really good, but the effort and the time that's involved to make it work is actually heavily increased. So with that said, I'll now run you through the possibility of losing the foam backing on the back of that fabric and what to do and how to recover from little mishaps like that. So if that was to happen, what I suggest to do is, so you gently pull back the fabric and you've lost your foam. If you were to spray glue on the back of the fabric and it hasn't got foam backing on the back of that material, just be careful, because it can seep through straight onto the visible side and you'll get a glue stain. On black fabrics, that might look silver, it might stay silver or like really hard for the whole duration. It just won't clean up. So I suggest to spray a tiny bit of glue, let it dry, let it become tacky if required. Also, when you go to lay the fabric back down, because you've lost your foam backing, if you double up your foam backing anywhere, you're going to get bumps and lumps and stuff come through. On suede fabrics, you can kind of get away with that. I'll show you a close-up now of what it looks like when you lose your foam backing on this fabric. You can see there, so we lost a tiny bit of foam as we were pulling back up. Now, if we continue to keep pulling back up, we could potentially turn that into a much larger area. So you want to kind of stop and try to see if you can recover and reposition the fabric without being too much of an issue. So with the experience of using this fabric, I've used it a few times before, where basically the same customer has brought me the same type of fabric on multiple jobs. So it is the really nice, clean looking fabric. It looks really good, the outcome, but the process of applying it can be quite tedious and difficult. So I'm not pushing you guys to buy our fabric. It's just more or less that if you're watching our videos and we make it look easy, it's probably because we're using the best quality and convenient materials out there to use that's available on the market. And that's all that we sell to you guys. So, the outcome of this job looks really nice. The feel of the texture looks really good, but there is a difference. And and there's just things that can go wrong. So really, I like to just get in the garage, do the job and get out again, because the amount of demand of time that's needed in all the jobs that come through the pipeline with fabric sales, where people ordering stuff and the phone's going off like crazy, like 70 calls a day or something like that. I've got to run my process really efficiently. That way I can handle the amount of jobs that do come through. So in doing that, I like to use everything really highly convenient. That's why the glues that I use come through that massive aerosol can, the canister. You just switch it on, spray your glue and turn it off, and then that's all done. You don't have to run no compressors, there's no sound. You can work any time of the day. I've got air purifiers on in the background as well to cleanse the air as I'm working, to remove any smell, but all the glue products that we use are very low odors, so you can hardly ever smell them anyway. I just like to keep the respirator on and all the safety gear on, because I'm using this stuff every day, and over time things do build up in your system, so it's better off just to have the prevention there and be able to not worry about any health issues, or try to basically prevent anything from building up in your system long term. So all these things, even the hasc-tac brand, sometimes they actually advertise their stuff as non-toxic, I believe, so you can always look into that as well. But you can see this fabric that we're using today, how easy it was to tear, and the foam backing, you can just scratch it off, you know, and it feels all canvassy, it feels cheap. And then compare that to one of our flat knit fabrics, which is not suede, but you can see that there's a lot more resistance in trying to tear it apart. You got the stitching on the back as well. You got a good stretch on our fabric, and you got zero stretch on the suede that we're using today. It makes a difference, so just keep that in mind. That depends on what fabric you use, can make all the difference. From there, never skip on this step. Go around the whole job, make sure you push down on it really tightly to the board to get good adherence to the board. Blow it all down, and we've got the finished job now. The outcome looks amazing, it's turned out perfect. So the suede look doesn't look cheap once the job's completed, so it's great. It's a great finish. We used about 1.5 cans for this medium-sized sedan. And hope you found this video helpful, guys. If you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Maybe leave a comment below on your greatest takeaway that you might have gained from this video. Subscribe if you want to see more content and help us out. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next video. Catch ya.